All right, the reason you're missing a lot of snatches is probably a result of the first few inches of the movement. And so today we're going to talk about the difference between a static start and a dynamic start. Pros and cons of each. I'm Dave Spitz at Cal Strength. Let's get started. Dynamic start versus static start. Dynamic start, there's two variations primarily that people will use. The first is to start with the shoulders either on top of or just behind the bar with a very vertical torso and the hips lower than the knees. And what the athlete does is raises the hips up to create that start position. The second variation, the athlete starts with the hips high and then descends down into that start position. Both of these variations essentially will utilize a stretch shortening cycle to do two real important things. Number one, to create tension in the body in the right areas. So we're creating that tension in the quads, in the lower back, and we're pressurizing the core. Secondly, it gives you an opportunity to create some momentum. So the bar is going to be a little easier to break from the floor in that dynamic start position. With a static start, you're going to have the bar set up, you're going to assign your start position, and you're going to go by just initiating the lift by pushing the feet to the floor. Irrespective of whether you're using a dynamic or static start, we look at the true start position as where the plates are going to initially break from the platform or from the floor. And so in that situation, the knees need to be below the hips need to be below the shoulders, but we want the torso in the snatch to be as flat as possible, so as parallel with the ground as we can achieve in terms of those positions. So whether you're doing a dynamic or a static start, where we break the plates from the floor is the position that we're really evaluating to understand whether the start is correct or not. Dynamic start. It's also nice because it gives you a routine that prepares you mentally to snatch. So when we're talking about tension, if you're pulling yourself into a start position through a dynamic movement, what you're essentially doing is creating tension in the quads, the lower back, and pressurizing the core. And then by doing that, just creating that additional dynamic sensation, you're just increasing momentum from the start. The cons of that are it can be very inconsistent. So where your hip height is in relation to your shoulders, where the bar is in relationship to your foot, you can have consistency issues there. You can also be inconsistent with the tempo of the movement. So sometimes you're going to use a dynamic start and the bar is going to start faster or slower based upon how it feels. So those tempo issues. And lastly, it presents some coaching challenges. So if you're self-coached or if you have a coach that is kind of learning with you, sometimes it's difficult to spot some of these errors because you have a little bit more complicated movement pattern prior to liftoff. So you do have some coaching challenges. As we move into the static start, looking at some of the pros, accuracy. So accuracy of position, so your shoulders, your hips, your knees, where the bar is in relationship to your foot, everything is consistent with regard to creating those positions. So you're going to be very accurate. Coachability is going to be high, so your coach can really do a good job making sure that you're in that exact same start position every lift. And then the consistency with respect to tempo, you can really kind of perfect that. So you can make sure that you're using the same tempo. We like to say that 50 kilos in the snatch should look like 150 kilos as it relates to tempo. Cons, it can be intimidating. So as you start from that static position, it's a little more nerve-wracking because you don't have any momentum to break the bar from. And as a result, it requires a little more strength. So, being able to hold those isometric positions and being able to push to the floor is going to require a little more strength in a dynamic start. And then finally, you might find actually tempo inconsistencies with this static start as a result of fatigue. So as you get heavier and heavier with regard to your workouts, you might find leg strength Back fatigue becomes an issue, and so making sure that you understand that there may be some inconsistencies as it pertains to tempo with the static start as a result of fatigue. Irrespective of whether you use a static start or a dynamic start though, good fundamentals still apply. So again, evaluating the actual start position, where those plates break from the ground, but pros and cons to both. So do what you're most comfortable with, but just make sure that you're aware of all of these aspects as it pertains to your start. So hopefully that was a helpful discussion. If you have questions, just pop them down in the comments section. We'll try and answer them as quickly as we can. Also, if you visit californiastrength.com, we have programs that will help you with your consistency, help you with your Olympic lifting, and look forward to seeing you there.